Good evening and welcome to the Mahatattva community. It's Saturday and we are back with yet another informative webinar with our guest speaker today, Mrs. Neelu Malik. Having been a part of the Army fraternity for over 40 years, the emotional well being of our soldiers' families has always been very, very close to her heart. And her psychology background has aided her in upskilling their communication skills and molding their personalities to make them really, really confident. Mrs. Neelu Malik is an accomplished soft skills trainer with many hours of training under her belt in areas as diverse as transaction analysis, motivation, and goal setting. She has also worked on aspects pertaining to conflict, anger, stress management, communication, and interpersonal relations. Today, she is going to enlighten us about how being in touch with our own emotions will lead us to live more harmonious and peaceful lives, especially in these stressful COVID times. I'm sure all of you can relate to that. If you do have any questions, please put them down in the chat box and they will be taken up at the end of the session. Without further ado, over to Mrs. Neelu Malik, who is going to talk about how emotional intelligence can bring harmony between head and heart to guide our survival. Over to you, Neelu.
Thank you, Ashima, for the opportunity to interact with Team Mahatattva. Good evening, friends. Greetings and a warm welcome to all. The contribution of Mahatattva towards education development and preparing students to face the real world is truly inspiring. And I'm in particular fascinated with the concept of create, which is indeed thought provoking and futuristic in its application. And especially for me, it is very heartening to see that there's a connect between your vision and my talk, which has its focus on making our children adept at mastering the emotional space and preparing them to face the realities of life which await them. Sharon, who is part of my team, will be supporting me with the virtual management. Thanks, Sharon. So, to begin with, yes, my bond with the army family for almost 4 decades now, plus my hockey background, gave me immense opportunity to interact with people from different demographics, people from diverse cultural, social, economic, religious backgrounds. And this exposure gave me a deep insight into people, their minds, their thoughts, their thinking processes, their responses, their learnings, and their behaviors. And well, why do they behave the way they do? During this journey, there were some pertinent questions which crossed my mind as to how is it that some people are able to preserve their most prized relationships while others just corrode them, and how toxic emotions can put our physical and mental health at much risk, as does, say, chain smoking. Whereas, on the contrary, an emotional balance protects our health and well being. How even today the market forces, the market trends are changing and reshaping our work life and putting an extra or a premium on our emotional intelligence for on the job success. And well, the most keen observation which came my way was how emotional intelligence plays a more powerful role than our academic intelligence towards the holistic development of our mind, our body, our soul, our life, thereby helping us become successful individuals in all fronts, be it our personal front, our professional, or our social fronts. So, having seen the deep impact of these factors in our day to day life, brought this subject very close to my heart. And well, that is why I chose to name my topic, as you can see, Heart Start with Emotional Intelligence, with heart being the key word, because a heartbeat is the first sign of life in the mother's womb and stays on till the end. And also because heart is the center and the vital source of all our, say, sensibilities, our being, our courage, our will, our motivation, our personality, and most importantly, our feelings and our emotions. Our emotions, which range from love to lust, from joy to sorrow, from kindness to violence, from pride to guilt. And well, speaking of emotions, emotions are universal and perhaps the greatest source of uniting the human species. Clearly, our diverse cultural, our religious, and our political beliefs have not united us. They have rather tragically divided all of us. Whereas, on the contrary, the positive emotions like friendliness, trust, forgiveness, empathy, compassion, cooperation, collaboration, they all have the potential to unite all of us. So, well, that was the basic introduction of my topic, and I shall just give you a preview of what I shall be covering now. Well, emotions encompass an entire lifespan. In today's talk, however, I will only be giving you a glimpse of a certain aspects. Nevertheless, each aspect forms the basis for a detailed subsequent talk. So, well, I shall be covering what emotions are, what is their nature, how to school them, how childhood and adolescence can impart some fundamental emotional messages and determine our life course. What is emotional intelligence and how to develop it? The cost of emotional illiteracy, and how emotional literacy can be a prevention. And in the end, some takeaways. Well, I shall start with Aristotle's quote, who was a famous Greek philosopher and whose writings include the logic and the philosophy and the functioning of the human mind. I quote, anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, with the right degree, for the right purpose, at the right time, and in the right way, that is not easy. Well, don't you think we see this happen with us, all of us, with a fair frequency in our day to day life? Don't we often hear of the office goer facing humiliation at the workplace, which creates stress and anxiety in him? And this manifests in the form of frustration and annoyance and anger, which trickles down to his subordinates, his colleagues. And by the time he reaches home, the major brunt of his anger is borne by the people who are closest to him, his family, his spouse, his children, who become the victims of his anger. So you see, it's not easy to handle emotions, but then it's not impossible to. We can all learn the art and the science and the skills of understanding and managing our emotions and emotions of others. So, first, we'll have to start by understanding little about what emotions are. Well, emotions are instinctive feelings, intuitive feelings. You can call them our gut feeling. which is an immediate understanding of something. You just know about it. It's a feeling which is within your body, and which only you can experience, and it's quite different from any kind of reasoning or logic. And listening to this intuition helps you avoid unhealthy relationships and situations. Well, emotions are also reactions to a stimulus that are picked up by our senses from the self, the other person, and the situation. So when I say self, I mean myself, my mood, my temperament, my motivation, my personality, which all give rise to my emotions and accordingly to my response. So, say on one particular winter morning, my mood is low. So I may just want to be just by myself, not even go out with my friends or for a walk. I may just want to just sit back and read a book. The other stimulus can be the other person, where I mean my interpersonal relationships with the other person, my equation with the other person, my interaction with the other person. So, in that case, if I have a good equation with the person I am with, I may, instead of reading a book, would opt to go out for a walk with that person, the other person. And well, emotion is also a reaction to the situation. So let's take a situation where, say, when I speak about the situation, it's the circumstances around me. So say on the same day I am not well or I'm running fever, I would now not want to read a book. I would nor want to go for a walk. I would just want to lie quietly in my bed. Well, emotions are also biological states associated with the nervous system. You see, when we are having any emotion, there are biological changes which take place within our body. So, for example, if we take anger, when we are angry, blood flows to our arms and our hands, making it easier for us to, grasp something and strike at the enemy or at the other person. And along with this, there is an increased heart rate, and there's a rush of hormones which generate a pulse of energy which is strong enough for a vigorous action. So you'll find that people, when they are angry, they get into physical fights very quickly. Well, in positive emotions also, we see such biological changes. So, say for emotions of during emotions of love or happiness, tender feelings, devotion, or say friendliness, sexual gratification, trust, the opposite happens. In this case, the brain fosters an increase in the available energy and offers the body a state of rest and relaxation, and also a state of readiness and enthusiasm for whatever task is at hand, thereby striving towards greater variety of goals. And that is why you'll see that people are able to make better decisions and maintain better interpersonal relations when they carry positive emotions. Well, the name of my topic was Heart Start with Emotional Intelligence. And I also mentioned some time back that the heart is the center of all emotions. तो फिर ये दिल की बात में दिमाग का क्या काम है? So to understand the relation between our dil and our dimag, or to understand the stronghold of emotions over our thinking mind, let us understand the brain circuitry without going into the anatomy of the detail of the brain, or the medical technicalities of the brain. So we see the adult human brain, which weighs about say 3 pounds or so with its cells and neural juices, and it's about triple the size of those in our nearest cousins, the apes and the monkeys and the gibbons. Now, over millions of years of evolution, the brain has grown from bottom up. You see the pink area, the pink shaded area? Now, this is the most primitive part of the brain and is shared by all species and is known as the reptilian brain. Now, it is there from the time the first creatures appeared on the earth, and it is located on the brain stem surrounding the top of the spinal cord, right here at the base of the head. Now, this brain regulates the basic life functions like breathing and heartbeat and metabolism of body organs. This brain also has a set of pre programmed regulators that keep the body running, that ensures survival, fight, or flight. However, this brain cannot be said to either think or learn or feel. And that is why you'll see that reptiles like snakes and dinosaurs like maternal instinct. When their young ones hatch, the newborns must hide to avoid being cannibalized. Now, as we evolved, and with the arrival of the first mammals, came a new key layer of the emotional brain. Now, this brain is called the limbic brain or the lion brain, located on the top of the head here. The limbic or the lion brain. Now, this brain started recognizing emotions like love, fear, sadness, anger, sexual pleasure, violence. And this brain is very animalic and impulsive in nature. Well, during evolution, from these emotional areas evolved the thinking brain, which is called the neocortex, and which is located on the forehead here, symbolically. Now, this neocortex is the seat of thought. It recognizes the language of logic, the right and wrong, the good or bad. So, as a human being, now I have the reptilian brain, which looks after my survival. I have the limbic brain, which gives rise to my emotions. मुझे प्यार आता है पर मुझे गुस्सा भी आता है. And then I have my neocortex, which does the logical reasoning for me. But as we proceeded up the evolution cycle from a reptile to mammals to humans, the sheer mass of the neocortex increased. And with this increase, there was a geometric rise in the interconnections in the brain circuitry. And larger the number of connections, greater was the range of possible responses. So while a rabbit in fear would hide in a burrow, a monkey would climb a tree. But the human cortex allows a far more calculated response, including dialing 100 for help. That is why we humans have a more subtle and a more complex emotional life. But well, these higher centers, the neocortex, does not govern all the emotional life. In crucial matters of the heart and in emotional emergencies, such matters are deferred to the limbic system, the one with the emotions. And it is at this point, at this juncture, that the limbic system becomes very powerful, rather, and becomes, and influences the rest of the brain, rather even at times paralyzes the rest of the brain. And this is the time when most of the heinous crimes like rape and murder takes place. Well, experts say that emotions are like waves. They come and they go, and they are, they're on the beach. If we stand there and if we see a huge wave coming, what do? We step back because we feel that the wave can be dangerous and I can drown in it. And if it's a small wave, I continue to stand there and enjoy the soft wrap of of water around my feet. So at the beach, I was intelligent enough to step back. However, what happens in real situations, real life situations, we don't step back and we hold on to our emotions, which are like waves, which we know they will come, they will go back. But we keep standing there and we get immersed in it and get hijacked by the emotional wave, which is, like I mentioned, so very impulsive and animalic. And we get carried away by these emotions and we react. Now, this emotional hijacking occurs in an instant, triggering a reaction, say, of anger. Let's take the example of anger. So now this triggers a reaction moments before the thinking mind even can take a glimpse as to what is happening, let alone if it is a good idea, whether I should be taking this step or whether I should be reacting like this or not. And the hallmark of such a hijacking is that once the moment passes, those who possessed that emotion, they have the sense of not knowing what came over them. These moments of impassioned action that we regret once the dust settles down, which we later on, think to ourselves, oh, how could be I so irrational? Well, uh, let these limbic hijackings are not always in distressing situations. They are also during moments of joy. So we must learn to hold on to these kind of hijackings. So moving on. So till now we were reacting to a situation. So let us see how to learn to respond. So response means putting thoughts, putting sensibilities, putting intelligence behind your feelings before you take any action. And for this, we must learn to do self awareness, which is the ongoing attention to one's internal states. Being aware of what is happening rather than being immersed and lost in it is the difference between being murderously enraged at someone and having self reflexive thought. Oh, this is anger I am feeling, even as you are enraged with that person. This subtle shift in the mental activity signals that your neocortex is trying to monitor your emotions. And this awareness of emotions is the fundamental emotional competence on which emotional self control builds and our other emotional competencies get built up from here. Self awareness has a more powerful effect on strong negative feelings. The realization that this is anger I'm feeling gives us two options. First, that this for the first option is not to react, right, to this particular emotion which is coming up, and second is to let it go. So let me just give you a small example on this. When we say stop that to a child whose anger has led him to hit a playmate, we may stop his hitting, but the anger still simmers and the child's thoughts are still fixated on the trigger for the anger. But he stole my toy, and the anger continues. But here, if there is self-awareness, it helps us to let go of the emotion. So our children should also be taught to do some self-awareness so that they can firstly not react to situations, and then also letting go of the emotions. So to learn to do self-awareness, we also need to take care of our lion who's sitting here. We need to be constantly in touch with our lion and keep talking to our emotions and caressing them, giving love to them. This will help us recognize our emotions, and gradually it will start giving us indications. So, example, say if I'm going to get into a state of anger, my body will start giving me indications, maybe like an increased heart rate, or a change in my tone, increase in the rate of speech, or a change in the the kind of words I'm going to use. All these indications will help me step back from the situation. But remember that in both situations, whether a negative emotion or a positive emotion, the lion sitting here will charge. It will explode. It will just, if in anger, if you let it explode, if you just unleash your lion, it is going to kill all your relationships. You lose your face, you lose your grace. Also, do not allow your lion to implode. Do not put your emotions to sleep. Do not dope your lion. So don't suppress your feelings, rather, address the issue. Rather, implosion is worse than explosion, because implosion is an internal explosion and it gets very luminous and it ruins our health. The remote control of the lion should be in your hand. So tame your lion. Your lion should be roaring, should be an alive kind of a person. It should be friendly, it should be respectful. So try and listen in a way that others like to speak to you, and speak in a way that others like to listen to you. Try this, and you'll soon find that you're very nicely controlling your lion. And moving on, well, let us comprehend also as to how a simple emotion, when exercised persistently and out of proportion, how it can convert into an illness. For this, let us quickly understand the family of emotions. You see, there are hundreds of emotions along with their various blends and mutations. Now, some of them are main emotions like anger, sadness, enjoyment, love, fear. And others are secondary emotions like hope, courage, doubt, jealousy. Now, each of the main emotion forms the core or the nucleus of its family, with its relatives rippling out from there in countless mutations. For example, if we take anger as the main emotion, from which ripple out moods. Now, moods, which are technically speaking more mutated and more long lasting than an emotion. So, while it is relatively rare to see a person in the heat of anger the whole day, it is not rare to see a person in an irritable mood. And beyond moods, develop the temperaments, which is the readiness to evoke the given emotion or mood, which makes people hostile. So I'm sure we have all seen people who are very, excuse me, who are very hostile in nature. They easily get into arguments every now and then indulge in shouting and in profanity. And Still beyond such emotional disposition of temperament comes the outright illness, in which the person starts hating and gets into indulges into violence with others, and he's perpetually trapped in a toxic mental state. So it starts from an emotion, develops into a mood, then into a temperament, and finally at the far end into an illness. And we can see a similar chain formation in other emotions also, be it sadness, enjoyment, love, all these. Therefore, any emotion, whether positive or negative, it should be used with a measured demeanor and should be nipped in the bud before it becomes an illness. But well, there's a hallmark of emotions. Both positive and negative emotions cannot occupy the mind equally at the same time. So say if I am sad and crying over the loss of dear one, I cannot be happy and laughing at the same time. It is humanly impossible. Therefore, it's our responsibility, our duty to ensure that positive emotions constitute the dominating influence in our minds. And here comes the law of habit, which plays a pivotal role in making or breaking our lives. So here is a quote by Lao Tzu, who was an ancient Chinese philosopher on the law of habit. I quote, "Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. And watch your character, it becomes your destiny." Now, though habits and habit formation is a vast subject in itself, but it would be imperative for me to cover just a few features, important features of habits. We learn by doing, we all know that, and anything we do repeatedly becomes a habit. So, for example, by behaving courageously, we learn courage. And when we practice any action consistently, it becomes permanent and automatic. And remember, most of our behavior is habitual, comes automatically without thinking. So, for example, a person who has a negative attitude towards life would be behaving in a negative manner without realizing that he is doing so. It comes out of a habit. Though later on he may be regretting so many times as to why did I behave so negatively about so and so situation. Another feature of habit. In the face of adversity, our thoughts, our emotions, and behavior, whether positive or negative, can only be what we have practiced. When we practice negative emotions of hate and anger in small events, and then hope to manage major events in a positive way, it won't happen. Habits can be formed by default or determination. If we don't decide what habits to form, remember by default we may end up with bad habits. So if today I do not decide to possess the habit of telling the truth, by default I will end up telling lies most of the times. And habits acquired in childhood become set in the basic neural wiring, and they are harder to change later in life. Habits like procrastination, indecision, indiscipline. But also, we must remember that it's never too late to change, regardless of your age and how old the habit is. We can change by being aware of what needs to be changed. We can unlearn self destructive behavior and learn positive behavior. It will take time, but once mastered, it will give a new meaning to life. So, well, let us now see uh, the cost of emotional illiteracy, the kind of habits we form, and so what is the cost we are paying for this kind of bad habits. So this is a survey of juvenile crimes in India from 2005 to 2015. The number of crime cases by juveniles doubled in these 10 years. The number of children under 14 who are murder victims doubled. The increase in rape cases went up by 143%. The proportion of unwanted teen pregnancies tripled, and the proportion of venereal disease among teenagers quadrupled. More and younger teenage girls are getting pregnant. The birth rate among girls 10 to 15 years has risen steadily. Some call it babies having babies. Now, these alarming statistics are like a canary in the coal miner's tunnel. And why I have a reason to use this phrase of a canary in the coal miner's tunnel is because of an old practice. In the olden times, the miners used to carry a canary bird, which is a small sing bird, into the coal mine, and whose death would indicate a drop in the oxygen level and a rise in the carbon monoxide levels. So it was a signal for the miners to exit the tunnel. Similarly, these statistics are a signal to all of us that unless we intervene as a responsible society, our generations to come do not have a bright future as far as their emotional health is concerned. And well beyond such these sobering numbers, the plight of today's children can be seen at more subtle levels in their day-to-day problems that have not yet really blossomed into outright crisis, and based on the national sample of emotional condition, and also based on the on parents and teachers assessments, there is a steady worsening, and no one problem stood out. All pointed at the wrong direction. We see this is the emotional malaise our children are suffering from. Today's children are suffering from anxiety and depression. They are more lonely, they are more fearsome, worrisome, they are more nervous out of the need to be perfect. Some children are suffering from withdrawal and social problems. They prefer to be aloof, they are more secretive, they don't believe in sharing whatever is in their heart. They indulge in sulking, they lack energy, and they are overly dependent on others. While some children are suffering from attention and thinking problems, they are unable to pay attention or sit still. They dwell in daydreaming, and they are unable to take their minds off thoughts. They will act without thinking, leading to poor decision making. Then some children are turning into delinquents and getting into very aggressive kind of behavior. Such children like to hang around with kids who get into trouble. Such children will believe in lying, in cheating, in arguing, in being mean to other people. They get into destroying other people's property, and they easily get into a very hot temperament. There's a new kind of toxicity which is seeping into and poisoning their very experience of childhood, which is signifying that there's a major deficit in their emotional competency. And mind it, no children, rich or poor, are exempt from this risk. These problems are universal, occurring in all ethnic, racial, or income groups. This emotional malaise seems to be a universal price of modern life our children are leading. Well, now let us see as to how emotional literacy can help us prevent the emotional malaise. So let's look into the roles parents can play. Parents can be coached to become emotional mentors to their infants and toddlers because the preschool years are the crucial ones for laying the foundation skills. Emotional capacities such as empathy and self regulation, they start to build up virtually during infancy. And if I was to quote a little story from Mahabharat, we all know that how Abhimanyu, while he was in his mother's womb, learnt the strategy to pierce the Chakravyuh, and how later, years later, in the battle of Kurukshetra, he manages to pierce through the Chakravyuh and but gets killed there. So you see how our learnings, even at an unborn stage, get embedded into our into our subconscious and unconscious minds, and how with such precision we can take out this information years later. So moving on to the roles our schools can play. So one solution is a new vision of what schools can do to educate the whole student, bring together the heart and the mind into the classroom. We have to create innovative classes that aim to give children a grounding in the basics of emotional intelligence and inculcate in them essential human competencies such as self awareness, self control, empathy, and the skills of listening, resolving conflicts, cooperation. The academic lessons can be blended with feelings and relationships, with caring and sharing, about self worth and motivation, friendship, positive attitudes, and understanding each other's perspectives. To start with, the kindergarten year marks a ripening of our social emotions. Feelings such as insecurity, humility, jealousy, envy, pride, all which require the capacity of comparing oneself with others. The world of social comparison begins for a small 5-year-old child right here. And this is the age when, for having an older sister who gets an A grade, can make the younger sister start to think herself as dumb by comparison. And from 6 to 11 years, these years can influence the child's adolescence and beyond. His self worth depends on his ability to achieve in school. If he fails at this during this period, he sets into motion the self defeating attitude, which can dim his prospects for an entire lifespan. From, say, 12 to 15 years, the children are exposed to temptations and pressures of for smoking and drinking, drugs, and sex. And then onwards, they are faced with ambiguous kind of social realities. That is the ability to understand one's own perspective and the viewpoint of the others who are involved. So, for example, if a kid is mad because he saw his girlfriend talking to another boy, this child should be encouraged to consider what more may be going on from their point of view rather than just plunging into a confrontation with the other guy. Therefore, the optimal design for emotional literacy program is to begin early, be age appropriate, and run throughout the school years. So, one solution is if we move on. So, now after parents and the schools, let us see how the society can play an important role. Well, we should intertwine efforts at school and at home and in the community. All the three efforts should be put together. And it's time that we turn into a caring community, a place where students feel respected and cared about and bonded to each other. So, whatever role we are playing, whether we are a parent or a teacher, an employer, an employee, a child, an adult, we should all learn to be sensitive to each other's needs. Our remember our passions when they are well exercised, our emotions when they are well exercised, they will have wisdom, they will guide our thinking, they will guide our values, and they will look into our survival. But they what happens is that they easily run amok, which they often do. And as Aristotle puts it, the problem is not in emotionality, but with the appropriateness and the expression of emotions. So, well, let us understand the essentials of emotional intelligence now. So, emotional intelligence is the basic fare for living. When you can attune to the innermost feelings of those you deal with, when you're able to handle disagreements so that they do not escalate, when you can cooperate and collaborate and work as a team, thereby helping each other achieve greater goals, when leadership can be an art of persuading and influencing to work others toward common goals rather than just domination, when you have the ability to acquire and apply the knowledge from your emotions and emotions of others. So, for this, you must build up your emotional repository from your emotional experiences for any future reference. Emotional intelligence is also the ability of my neocortex to tame my lion. The thinking brain should guide my emotions. Is it lust or is it love? The heart says, "Oh, that girl is beautiful. I love her." I have I start having feelings of lust for her. But no, the neocortex reasons out. She's your sister. You can't look at her with those instincts. Next, it is also the ability to moderate negative emotions and enhance positive ones. So, if a mother is worried when her young daughter has not reached home till past midnight, she can only be called concerned. She can't be called paranoid by her daughter. Therefore, do not repress or exaggerate the information because Your change of thoughts will change your world. It is also the ability to adapt oneself to the situation. You see, sometimes situations are tough and they will make you numb and hard towards others and the world. And sometimes the situations, tough situations, will break you down. But it's all okay as long as, if you can, most of the times adapt yourself to your adversaries, like the way the coffee beans which blend themselves in boiling water and leave behind their aroma and their color. Another ability which I strongly believe in is the ability to have a strong belief system. We must remember that a simple belief about yourself guides a large part of your life. Rather, I would say every part of your life. Much of what you think of yourself today, of your personality, or vice versa, much of what may be preventing you from fulfilling or unleashing your potential grows out of this belief system. So, a strong belief system is the bedrock of all of the kind of life we can lead. Well, emotional intelligence is also the ability to have emotional agility, the emotional resilience. That is, in the face of setback, to bounce back like a rubber ball. And here, I would like to share a life history, a true life history. This was a man who failed in business at the age of 21, was defeated in a legislative race at the age of 22, failed again in business at the age of 24, had his sweetheart die when he was 26, had a nervous breakdown at 27, lost a congressional race at 34, lost a senatorial race at the age of 45, failed in an effort to become vice president at 47, and then lost another senatorial race at 49. So you see, within a span of almost 30 years, this person faced one challenge, one setback, one after the other. But well, let's see what next. He was elected the president of United States of America at the age of 52. Abraham Lincoln, who is also to date known as one of the greatest heroes of America. For him, a setback was not a failure. It was not a dead end. It was just a detour. He had two options. He could have easily quit and hung his head in shame, or joined back his law practice. Incidentally, let me just tell you the humble background he came from a very poor family where he did self study and became a lawyer. So he could have gone back to his law practice. But no, for him, he took a detour and he kept on persevering till the time he achieved what he wanted to. And we all have the power to bounce back like this, only if we believe in ourselves. So, well, I have basically given you an insight into emotional intelligence, a subject which has a plethora of activities uh, which form the basis of subsequent talks. Now, let's see how we can develop our emotional intelligence. So, you first need to discover yourself, do a self evaluation. Have the courage to look at yourself honestly. It can change your life. What are your weaknesses? Are you willing to accept and work on some areas to make yourself a better person? Observe how you react to people. Do you rush to judgment before you know all the facts? Look honestly at how you think and interact with people. Try to put yourself in their place. Listen and be more open and accepting of their perspectives and needs. Learn to empathize. Be understood. First, learn to understand the other person. Take responsibility of your actions. If you hurt someone's feeling, apologize directly. Don't ignore. People are usually more willing to forgive and forget if you make an honest attempt. Well, now let me just wrap it up with a few key takeaways, which are the essence of my talk. And even if you can take home just a few of them also and start working on them, I can assure you they will make a sea change in each one of us. So, well, smile is my first key takeaway. Do you know that when that a newborn baby smiles for about 400 times a day, and as we grow into adulthood, we just smile about 40 times a day. हम लोग जिंदगी की जद्दोजहद में इतना फंस जाते हैं कि मुस्कुराना और हंसना ही भूल जाते हैं. So well, let's learn this art. This is a gift and a resource which God has given to us. Let's make full use of it. And we all know that the more we smile, the more we get back, the more happiness we get back. So even if you have to, at times this, I understand situations are such we just can't start smiling. But even if we start with the habit of even starting a fake smile, gradually you will learn to smile over various different situations. And I, in my Fauji language, would call it the Brahmastra. Always be loaded with this weapon. And I like to always remember that everything looks brighter from behind a smile. Next, our mind is like a parachute. It works only when it is open. So be open to ideas, to people, to situations. Stay positive. The foundation of success, regardless of your chosen field, is attitude. Next is a quote by the Dalai Lama. When you talk, you're only repeating what you already know. But if you listen, you may learn something new. Listening skills are the most important aspect of our communication. So hone your listening skills. And next is our law of habit, which I've spoken quite a bit about it. I'm repeating it again because it is the habit, like I said, which will make or break your life. The next, remember when you were a kid and were happy for no reason. Be that again. You see, each one of us is born with an intense drive to learn. As infants, we stretch our skills daily. Every day, we are stretching our skills when we are infants. And not just our ordinary skills, but the most difficult tasks of a lifetime, like learning to speak, learning to walk. But as children, we never decide, is it too hard to learn? Is it worth the effort? And we also do not worry about making mistakes or being humiliated by others. We as children walk, we fall, We get up and we move forward. Now, what is that which puts an end to this exuberance? You see, what happens is that as soon as we are growing up and as soon as we learn to start evaluating ourselves, we start creating self-limiting beliefs. Oh, I'm not smart enough. I'm afraid I may not succeed. Oh, I cannot take on this challenge. Oh, I cannot calculate, I cannot solve this mathematical problem. I may fail. So the fear of failure holds me back. But we must all remember, nothing ventured, nothing gained. These children should be our role models. Let's remember, let's always remember this, that is not always the people who start out the smartest end up the smartest. And here I leave you with a thought and a glimpse of a video that I will recommend each one of you to watch at your convenience. The video, I feel, will help you connect with the child inside you. And now, thanks a lot for viewing and for connecting with me and for staying with me till the end. This subject, of course, is very close to my heart and is deeply connected with our daily life. I'm sure it will arouse your inner feelings and reflect how emotions impact your relationships. And that's for now.
So, thank you so much, Neelu. On behalf of the entire Mahatattva team, I thank you for a very, very insightful session. And I like the way you connected the fact that emotions impact our physical health. We need to stay in touch with our emotions. We need to accept them. We need to find socially acceptable ways of dealing with negative emotions, and that it's not difficult to change the way we feel and think even at this age, so that it leads to us living a more fulfilling, peaceful, and harmonious life. I also really like the fact that you brought up, the fact that emotional intelligence plays a very, very important role in the holistic development of students. And that is what can actually impact their academic performance as well. And I really
Absolutely.
appreciate the fact that you actually took time to go through the Mahadatta Create curriculum, our website. And you brought out the fact that we do have a social and emotional connect in our Create curriculum, which is mandated by the National Education Policy. And we do inculcate the basics of emotional intelligence that you brought out in our curriculum: self awareness, self control, empathy, sensitivity, making them feel worthy of themselves, how to be tolerant, how to deal with failure, which I think is the need of the hour, because uh,
Absolutely.
students nowadays or children nowadays have not been taught how to deal with failure. And the fact is that, being on social media has created tremendous amount of pressure on how they think, act, feel, look. And I like the way in the end you brought out the fact that it's not just the home and the school, but the entire community which can help, by actually, making the child and the student feel worthy of themselves by creating a caring community. So, thank you so very much for a very, very enlightening webinar. And I'm sure the entire Mahatattva community is indebted to you about the same. Thank you, and bye bye.
Thank, thank you, Ashima, once again for the opportunity to get in touch with your team. And it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, and good
Thank you.
evening.